What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for Jimmy Smith, Ryan Moody, here to break down both cards tonight. And quickly, I may add, Jimmy, great night of fights so far. Obviously, we're recording this kind of in the Bellator card, but we're doing that because it means a lot for us to get content out to you guys quickly and give you our commentary. So we talked about this card, obviously, and I think a lot of the things we talked about really kind of came into play. First fight here, Jamahal Hill versus Darko Stocic, went a lot of the ways we thought it was. I thought Hill did a great job adjusting mid-fight to kind of work the body, kept range beautifully, didn't overcommit, didn't chase a finish, was also impressed with his ability to kind of pace himself, stayed calm, and basically put together the best performance you could have, I think, short of a finish, making your UFC debut.
Yeah, the issues going forward and all the positives you said are correct. Good footwork. I liked his combinations. Good angling. I like his lead hook. His takedown defense needs some work. Every time Stocic went for it, he got it. That's going to hurt him as you move up the rankings and face guys who can really put a lot of pressure on you. The double leg was always there. Also, chin really, really high. So he's got to solve those little technical things. But always with a fight like this, you want to be able to encourage your guy. You got to win. Good for you. Pat on the back. Here's what you need to clean up. There's always the positive and the negative when you go back to the gym. No matter how well a fighter does, you want to find something they did wrong. No matter how poorly a fighter did, you want to find something they did right. Hill did a lot of things right, but there are still those cleanup things he has to take care of as he moves up the ladder. You want to be able to really pinpoint those early in your UFC career.
Moving up the card, Cyphers and Angela Hill. I thought Angela Hill did a great job of making this into a brawl. I don't think she was as good of a technical fighter, but I think she really helped eliminate that advantage by kind of staying in range, making the best of counter-striking, and she kept kind of forcing Hannah to kind of go back and reset. And every time you would watch her take a couple steps back to try to reset, Angela would kind of come in and control her with combos, and she basically just got to the point where she went into the mount and she just continued to work elbows relentlessly, I might add, till they ended the fight. And, it's ironic. A lot of times we talk about, early stoppages and fan favorites. A lot of times we talk about Brazil and their passionate fans. The fans were really, really upset about the stoppage. I get it. It wasn't like, oh my God, she was totally not defending herself stoppage. But at that point, she was in such a bad position. She really couldn't get out. She was basically, in the mount up to her armpits. I really thought it was a good decision to stop the fight. She was taking unnecessary damage beyond this point, and she really hadn't defended herself for the most part of the past 15 to 20 seconds when the ref finally did step in.
Here's one thing that I will say that is across the board unequal in MMA, women's and men's. Women's fights tend to, across the board, get stopped a little bit earlier than men's fights. And I've talked to some referees and when they're candid, I'm not going to name any names, are like, yeah, I just don't like, a lot of them tell you. There's just something unsettling about watching a woman get beat up more than a man. When they're honest, they tell you that. And so I think there was a little bit of that at play. I don't see a men's fight getting stopped this early. I really don't. And now, I don't think it was an early stoppage, to your point. I don't think the stoppage itself was bad. But I think part of the reason the fans were a little upset about it is that I think we know a man's fight would have gone a little bit longer and she would have had to take a little bit more. The last punches just weren't that clean. She missed a few of them. Was in great position with the hips and the mount, as you were saying. Very, very high mount. As soon as it was on the ground, it was pretty much over. Angela Hill, easy transition to mount, good ground and pound. Cyphers couldn't buck her off, couldn't really get a relief from the ground and pound attack. And that was really what Hill did so expertly. Good job on the feet, controlled range well, in and out at the right time, good combinations. But really her groundwork is what got it done. Great win for her.
Agreed. And hometown girl. So I guess my hometown girl versus their hometown girl. So I couldn't really complain too much.
You're like, I can't be, I can't exactly be a neutral party in this one. I understand.
I was exactly correct. I was no longer neutral. Moving up this, to me, man, we're going to have probably an in-depth discussion on this. Alex Perez, Jordan Espinosa, they're going to call this submission by Von Fluke choke, which is going to have OSP blush a little bit. But I immediately thought back to the choke that Sage Northcutt got on, or I'm sorry, oh my God, now I can't think of his name. Bam Bam. Come on, help me, Jimmy. Save me. I'm drowning.
Yeah, who submitted Sage Northcutt? Is that what you're
Brian
thinking of?
Barberena. I was there.
Yeah.
I was actually there. Barberena submitted Sage Northcutt, very similar.
Yeah, so that's the
and
one
if
you're
you
thinking about,
remember, Sage got a lot of flack for tapping so quick. And I think this was even more impressive by Perez. He didn't even have to pass from half guard. It's a major statement in a division that keeps getting better. But one of the things, since we just mentioned the ref, was, listen, Dan did a great job at stepping in. You know, there was no tap. He basically watched Espinosa's legs go limp and went in and stopped it. But this, to me, you know, you really don't see this work, a blood choke like this, all that often, and it just be so brutal. And I do want to say one thing. I wasn't particularly happy with Alex picking him up as soon as he was out, because it was pretty clear that he was. So kind of a messy way to end this. But I thought it was kind of interesting the way this kind of all ties together with, you know, OSP kind of getting those rare chokes, and that's what they were initially calling it. And then, you know, going back to Sage and having all that flack for it. But overall, listen, very impressive win for Alex on the ground, and I'm glad to see that he got it done.
Yeah, it was an impressive win. The Von Flue choke, or the OSP choke as they're calling it now, is positionally slightly different than this. This is a standard arm triangle choke. What made it look different and appear different is from half guard. And when you're in half guard, most of the time, if you're on the bottom, you're able to get extension with your legs enough to make this choke not work. Now, part of it was the fence was in the way. He just couldn't get enough extension with his legs and his body to relieve the pressure on the arm triangle choke. Usually to finish in this position, from top position where Perez was, you got to be a bit taller and stronger than your opponent, generally speaking. Now, he was just able to put a ton of pressure, and once again, because of the fence, Espinosa couldn't get the range with his legs that he needed to relieve the pressure. That's why visually it looked a little different. Props to him for staying with the choke, because the arm triangle, like a lot of other chokes, you can really, especially in half guard, really burn yourself out going for it, because there's a lot of pressure in this position because he couldn't settle down because he wasn't around the guard. So, you know, Perez had to turn it on at the right time and put everything into the choke. And I've said this a lot, but finishing is an instinct, not a skill. It's not something you learn. It's something you kind of feel. When's that right moment? And there are a lot of great fighters out there who, GSP is probably the best example, who would dominate guys, just wipe them out, but had trouble actually, especially late in his career, getting the finish because it's just, you know, he had kind of a cautious style at the end, and knowing when to pull the trigger and commit everything to a finish. That, I mean, he's one of the smartest guys in terms of MMA. His fight IQ is off the chart. It's an instinct about when I can really finish, and Perez had that in spades tonight. That's important.
Your co-main event, Michael Chiesa, RDA. You know, Michael Chiesa surprised me in this one. I was worried that what had worked for Mike in the past against what I would deem, you know, kind of lesser opponents wouldn't translate over to RDA. I think in the second round, though, we really saw RDA's pacing and position kind of come into play with this fight. And it was, at least in that moment, becoming a winnable fight for Mike from a points perspective. And then he literally just kind of made sure that RDA's striking didn't give him enough control of position, and basically pointed himself out a win. I thought it was not an impressive win for him. I mean, I'm glad that, you know, they gave it to him, because I did see it that way. I know there was kind of some mixed reaction from the crowd. It wasn't a statement win, I don't think. And I think to that point, also afterwards, he just straight calls out Colby Covington and walks off, which is a great moment. But this was a win he desperately needed, a step up in competition, a step up in the division technically. And I guess he's going to use that to try to draw a match with Colby.
Yeah, he certainly will. And RDA, unfortunately, fell for what has been kind of his kryptonite for the most part at 170 pounds, which is he's a tweener. He's actually really 55. I know Chiesa was as well, but when you looked in the octagon, Chiesa looked a lot bigger than RDA. I mean, the takedown was just there every time he wanted it. And Chiesa's jiu-jitsu, and I've, you know, been fortunate enough to actually roll with the guy a bit, and he's got great pressure, really great pressure. And you saw Rafael dos Anjos kind of wilt eventually under that constant pressure. It wasn't like Colby Covington or Kamaru Usman, but it was the same strategy, the same execution, and Chiesa just went for that pressure attack over and over, and it wore dos Anjos out. Now, what he didn't have, RDA, was the power to really make Chiesa step back. Chiesa stayed behind the jab, stayed long with his punches, did enough to kind of keep Dos Santos at distance so that he could never step forward and give Chiesa a reason to back up. He doesn't really have that at 170. And in this fight, it really showed because Chiesa doesn't have that Division I experience like a Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley, Kamaru Usman. He's not on that level of takedown, and it constantly worked. And RDA just didn't have the power to back him up. And that was really the story of the fight. Chiesa just on him and on him and on him. Not that close with any submissions, but excellent positioning, and I think he deserved the win.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, one of those things where he was just heavy. Like, you could tell on the ground he was just heavy. It's not that RDA wasn't trying to advance. He was. It's just Michael Chiesa was just a level above tonight where RDA was, and justifiably gets him a win. Moving up to the main event, Curtis Blaydes came out. Really, really diverse look. Switching stances, mixing strikes, shooting. Clearly, both guys respected each other's power. As a little bit of a low blow there with JDS, but I thought Blaydes got the better of JDS the entire fight. Kind of delayed him in responding a little bit because of how much Blaydes was just putting in front of him. And when you get that hesitancy in a fighter, you mentioned it before, you have to have that finishing instinct. And in this case, we saw kind of a blend of those two. You've got JDS being a little bit hesitant because he doesn't know what's coming. Is it going to be, a kick? Is it going to be a combo? Is it going to be a shoot? So he's a little bit tentative, and Blaydes just opens up the floodgates the first opportunity he gets and puts JDS away.
Yeah, what's impressive about this is when a guy who's known for his takedown finishes a well-known knockout striker on his feet with a right hand. That's what really started it. That says a lot. Blaydes' takedown wasn't really working for him. Dos Santos was doing a good job at keeping distance, staying on his feet. Blaydes was kind of reaching for the takedown at certain points. Blaydes was in a position where he kind of had to stand and strike with JDS. And one of the first things I noticed in this fight is the timing and range on Junior Dos Santos' uppercut, which has always been his shot stopper, was off. You see he missed a few times pretty big with it. Blaydes did a good job of kind of baiting him and getting him to throw that punch when he was a little bit out of range. And if you're an old school boxing fan, best example is probably Douglas Holyfield when he went for an uppercut too far outside and it really cost him. That kind of thing, you get somebody to bite and you get them to overthrow because Junior Dos Santos is a power puncher. He really puts a lot into every shot. And I like the intelligence of Blaydes because you talked about the stance switches. It got JDS to pull the trigger on big punches at the wrong time. Everything Blaydes threw was tight, crisp, simple, pretty much a 1-2. That's what he threw. But it was hard to find room inside that 1-2, that short combination for Dos Santos to get anything done. That's what set everything up. And as soon as he landed that right hand, you saw Dos Santos kind of stagger a little bit, got a little stanky leg. And once he did that, Blaydes was all over him. But the impressive part to me is Blaydes, the takedown guy, won this without an effective takedown. And to me, that says a lot to the rest of the division.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head completely there. The visual of JDS going for those, massive arcing uppercuts, which, listen, we've seen connect and put a lot of guys down. And don't get me wrong, if it had connected tonight, probably would have had the same result. But Blaydes was just fighting on an intelligence level and what he was really kind of allowing himself to control as far as, hey, like you mentioned, I'm going to keep pace here. I'm going to force your hand before I force mine. And then, you really don't see it that visual often enough at this level. But, those images of him just taking those wild, almost golf swing approaches to an uppercut while, Blaydes is totally out of distance. And then, like you said, it just opens the window and that finishing instinct that you need to have at the heavyweight division, because sometimes that's all you need is that one moment to take complete advantage of to put a guy away. He obviously just saw it, took advantage of it, and got out of there with really, honestly, not taking a lot of damage either.
Which is important against a guy like JDS. So you can get through a fight with that guy and be laid up for a while because he has, as we said, such incredible, funky, unorthodox power. And that was the danger of JDS, is his uppercut comes right through your guard, his right hand comes over your guard, his left hook goes around your guard. And so a lot of times the standard defenses don't work. That funk, when it comes to the striking, is very, very effective for him, and it wasn't effective tonight.
Well, With that said, Jimmy, we are going to wrap this card up. We are going to transition over to watching Bellator, and then we will be back with a recap of that card as well. Appreciate you guys checking this out. And listen, I won't even say we're going to be back shortly. We're probably going to be back in a matter of hours with more commentary.